Namaste friends, welcome to another episode of the Essence of the Bhagavad Gita. We are still in chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita, the chapter on Karma Yoga, or the explanation that Krishna gives to Arjuna on the nature of right action. And the verse we are going to be looking at today is verse 35 from chapter 3. I'm going to read the Sanskrit verse for you now. Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha paradharmat swanushtitat Swadharme nidhanam shreyaha paradharmo bhayavaha. Now I will read the literal translation of this verse. To do one's own duty, even unsuccessfully, is better than to do someone else's duty successfully. It is better to die while trying to accomplish one's own duty than to settle for another's duty, which course is filled with danger and uncertainty. I want to start the commentary on this verse with a story. I'm not sure if the story is real or it's just apocryphal. It seems that it might be just apocryphal. I don't know the source of it. I've heard this quoted a few times before. This is the story of a great guru who lived in India, a great saint who had an ashram and who had a lot of disciples that lived with him. And many people came to him. He initiated people into sacred techniques and he taught them advanced meditation practices and things like that. And he had a disciple who lived with him. This disciple came to him at a very, very young age, and he spent all his life at the ashram serving his guru. And there was one particular way this disciple served the guru and served the ashram, and that was by chopping firewood. So every day this person would go to the forest to chop firewood for the ashram, and he would do that and he would bring the firewood back. And he was a very silent man. He did not teach. He was not part of the inner circle receiving specific guidance from the guru. The guru did not initiate him into higher techniques or give him advanced initiations of that nature. And yet this man was doing his duty, his seva of serving the ashram and the guru in his own particular way. One fine day, he was doing his job, he was doing his work of cutting the firewood in the forest, and he was by a river. And as he was chopping the firewood, he looks at the water in the river and he notices that most of his hair has turned gray. And he realizes that he has spent all his life, he has spent all of his youth and the prime of his life in the ashram chopping firewood. And suddenly he realizes, this thought comes over him, thinking, wow, what has he done with his life? All that he has done is chopped wood. Has he accomplished anything? He has not received any of the advanced initiations that his guru is giving. He has not claimed any particular position or stature in the ashram. He has not become a teacher, sharing these teachings with others. And then in that moment, his heart is overcome with this feeling of maybe something has gone wrong. Maybe he has just not done what he was supposed to in his life. And a drop of tear rolls down from his eyes. And as the story is told, the guru immediately was standing there without his own awareness, without this person's awareness. And before that drop of tear falls onto the ground, the guru puts his hand and takes on that tear. And the guru tells his disciple, you have no idea. When a person of your spiritual stature, when he sheds one tear, what can come to this planet? What great calamity can happen to this plane if you were to feel like that? Now, this story is dramatic and also so poignant in a sense that this person was of a very advanced spiritual stature, but it just did not look like how it might have looked for others. It did not follow the yardstick of worldly success. What does spiritual success look like in the eyes of a worldly man? Maybe initiations, maybe an orange garb, maybe a pedestal on which you sit, maybe a lot of followers, maybe all these things that you do on the outside. That's what many people might think is a sign of spiritual progress or spiritual accomplishment. But certainly that did not mean anything to this man's own spiritual advancement, where his soul was in relationship to God, to his guru, to his own journey toward inner freedom. And that is the essence of what Krishna is describing to Arjuna in this verse. To do one's own duty unsuccessfully is better than to do somebody else's duty successfully. In this world, where we are drawn to the material plane, where we relate to form more than spirit. That is the nature of the material plane. It is very easy to measure things from the outside, and that's what we do all the time. Anytime we want to assess something, measure something, we look at the form, we look at the outer accomplishment. What is accomplishment after all? The best job, the skills that you have, what you're able to do or not able to do in your life, the best relationship, how much money you have in your bank. All of these are seen as accomplishments on the material plane. And similarly, we take that same idea, the same principle, we apply it to the spiritual life as well. What is accomplishment on the spiritual level? The initiations you have received, all the pilgrimages that you have been on, the gurus that you have visited, the time that you have spent in the company of saints. How many hours do you meditate in a day? What have you accomplished? And those we think of as yardsticks. Not that we do not understand the spiritual principles behind these teachings or what we are truly doing in our lives, but our minds get carried away because we are relating to form so much on the material plane. We get mistaken. We start doing the same thing with our spiritual life as well. We mistake the outside for the inside. The outer life, the outer spiritual life somehow becomes a better measure in our eyes mistakenly, than the inner life that we are leading, than the inner freedom that we are truly pursuing on the spiritual path. And here Krishna is counseling us that outer success has no meaning at all, because what you're truly doing is working out your karma. You're working toward your own inner freedom, and there is no other yardstick to measuring that. And we have to embrace our karma, our dharma, our duties in this world in order to proceed toward that inner freedom. Nothing else can take us there, not the duties of somebody else. I'll share one more story with you. This story is clearly not literal or real, as you will realize in a few seconds. I don't know where I heard this. I heard this when I was very young, but I always remember this because it's a funny story, as you will see. Now, this is the story of a particular village in India. And in this village, everybody was complaining all the time. And God was listening to everybody's complaints. There's a big temple in the center of this village, and everybody went there to tell God all the things that were wrong in their life. How my spouse is not behaving the way I want her to, how I'm having health issues, my children are not going on the right track, I'm always poor, I don't have money, I have all these problems in my life, nothing is coming together, and can you please help me? Can you please solve these problems for me? And God, decides to show up in material form, as he often does, and he proposes a solution to all the villagers in this village. He tells them one day, he shows up, in an assembly, I suppose, and he says, I understand and I hear all your complaints. It seems to me that none of you are happy with the particular circumstances that you have in your own life, and I propose a solution. I want all of you to take all the karma that is yours, put it in a bag, and bring it to the temple. And I'm going to tell you what you can do there with that. And everybody is delighted that God is now going to take care of their karma. They pack all of their karma in a bag, and they start walking toward the temple. And as they're walking, everybody sees everybody else's bag. And everybody thinks, wow, my bag is so big, it is so heavy, it is so clumsy, and look at everybody else's bag. I would love to have that. I would love to have this person's bag. It is so easy to carry. Why not I just take that? And their thoughts, this is what they're going through as they're walking toward the temple. And as they reach the temple, God tells them, now I'm going to propose a solution to all your problems, and you yourself have answered your questions with your thoughts, which I've been reading all this time, which is that you would be much happier with somebody else's bag. So that's the opportunity that I'm going to give you right now. Now you put your bags down, and I'm going to switch off the lights in this temple, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes to pick up somebody else's bag, and you can walk away with that. You never have to turn back, and you will never have to deal with this bag that you brought into this temple that was your own. And as God is saying this, everybody is already scrambling around. They want to be closest to the person whose bag they like the most. So, everybody positions them the way they want to. And then God switches off the light, and everybody picks the bag they wanted to pick up, and they start walking outside of the temple. And a few minutes pass and a few hours pass. Everybody realizes one by one, this bag is not as comfortable as I thought it would be. I'm more miserable now than I was even before I went to the temple. Wow, this is heavier. This looked smaller than what I thought it was, but it is so heavy. I cannot even walk with this bag. I'm so much more miserable than I was before. And everybody starts praying again. They all go to the temple and make, desperate pleas to God. You know what, God, this bag is the worst bag I've ever had to carry in my life. I'd much rather have the bag that I used to have before. Can you please help me? I would do anything if you just give my bag back. And God is again pleased with all their prayers. He shows up and says, okay, seems like all of you want the same thing, which is your old bag back. So why not you just have that? And that's the end of the story. Now, that story is almost ridiculously funny, but it is not when we are going through that situation in our own life, when we are going through circumstances and wishing that they were different, not only that they are different, but somehow imagining that somebody else's karma might be more fitting for us than our own, somehow thinking that this particular circumstance, this particular difficulty, this difficult relationship or this equation with somebody in my life or this health issue, somehow not having this and having the karma of somebody else would be better for us. And we are often misguided in thinking that that would be the solution for us to grow spiritually. And that is what Krishna is saying is fraught with danger and uncertainty, because we are missing the point of the entire spiritual path, which is inner freedom, which is freedom in God. And how can we get freedom? By taking on somebody else's journey, by somehow imagining that if I were to walk in somebody else's shoes, they would fit me better than my own. It is the confusion that Maya creates in our own mind. And we have to learn to define success the right way. That is the key to finding our own way back to this journey of inner freedom, which is what is success? What is success in life when we are moving in the spiritual life? Well, Swami Kriyananda in his commentary on this verse says the only measure of success is inner freedom. And that's what we are constantly measuring all the time when we are making choices, when we are wishing for things in our life. We often wish for things in our life. We cannot stop doing that. We cannot say that we can be perfectly content all the days of all our lives. There are times when we wish things to be different, and we do pray to God for things in our life. But the thing that we want to be praying for the most over anything else is our own inner freedom, because that is the measure of true success, and that is really what will make us truly happy. As most of you know, one of the things that I enjoy doing, and I've been doing for some time now, is teaching meditation and sharing the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Most often people would say the biggest complaint or the biggest question that people would have is that I cannot control my thoughts. My mind is restless. Or sometimes people would even go one step further and say, meditation is not working for me. I'm not able to control my mind. I'm trying this technique. I'm trying the Hong Saw technique. I'm trying this other technique. I'm doing everything that you're telling me, but my mind is not coming in control. And the first response I have in such situations is, what can I say? Welcome to the club. That's what meditation is supposed to be. But then as you speak, as you think more about it, you realize that the reason why we perceive that as a problem is because we are measuring spirituality with some kind of objective standards of accomplishment that we set for ourselves. We have already defined in our minds that meditation is perfect thoughtlessness. And now when it is not that, it somehow feels like meditation is not working. And that's where we become confused in how we define success. How do we define success in this way? In this particular scenario? Well, meditation is constantly trying to bring your mind back to a point of focus. No matter how many times you get distracted, we do our best. We do our best to bring it back into focus. And the only way to measure it is try it for 20 minutes, try it for half an hour, try it for 40 minutes. Measure yourself. What were you like before those 30 minutes? And what do you feel like right now? Have you moved even 1 inch in the right direction? Now that is the measure of success. Now meditation might be defined as the thoughtless state, as the transcendental existence that is being fully absorbed in the present moment, and all of those philosophical concepts that all of us fully understand or at least are aware of. But if we were to define a spiritual principle just based on those outer accomplishments or yardsticks, then we miss the point of what it is that we are doing, because we have to start walking from the point where we are standing. We cannot simply impose an outer form or an outer definition on our own true karma. Our karma has to express in its own natural way, and meditation in that sense is just the minute by minute working with our own consciousness, working with our energies to bring them back to focus, to take charge of that energy within us. This is another story. I think today is a day of stories. Seems like, one of Yoganandaji's advanced disciples, in fact, his very first disciple in the US was this great man by name Dr. Lewis. And it's been a while since I read this story. I hope I get the details right. If not, I'm sure it is the essence of what the story is all about, because this is a real story that actually happened in the life of Dr. Lewis. Very early on, Yoganandaji obviously taught Dr. Lewis this techniques of meditation and Kriya Yoga. And very early on, the two of them, Yoganandaji and Dr. Lewis, were taking a trip. They both were young men when Yoganandaji came to Boston in the year 1920. And they took a trip, and it was in the summer months, and they went to the coast, and it was a beautiful beach. And Yoganandaji suggested to Dr. Lewis, how about we just sit here and meditate for some time? And Dr. Lewis said, sure, that sounds like a wonderful idea. This seems like a beautiful place. And they both sit and start meditating on the rocks by the beach. And as Dr. Lewis describes, I think I'm mostly right in how I'm saying this. I hope I get the details of the story right. As Dr. Lewis describes it, he was having the worst time of his life. He was not able to sit on those rocks. He was not comfortable. His mind was running crazy, and he was not able to focus in meditation. And he was just hoping over and over again that Yogananda would just stop his meditation and come back, and they would just be able to get into that car and leave. And he was sitting there just wishing for this every minute. And, the better part of him told him that no matter what happens, don't get up and leave. Don't stop your meditation practice. Don't just abandon and walk away. Be here, although it doesn't look like you're meditating, although you seem to be struggling every second, just sit here. And I believe, if I have this right, Dr. Lewis says Yogananda meditated for 5 hours on that beach. And Dr. Lewis also had to sit there for 5 hours, in the most uncomfortable position with a completely uncontrollable mind, wishing that he was not meditating. But then this is the most beautiful part of the story. Dr. Lewis says, ever since that day, that particular incident, he has never had any trouble sitting in meditation for any amount of time. Anytime he wanted to meditate, he was able to effortlessly focus his mind and be still in meditation. Wow! If only we knew that whatever struggle we are going through, if I would sit here for 5 hours, obviously I would be uncomfortable. I'm not prepared for a 5-hour meditation right at this moment. I probably wouldn't be able to. Or at least I wouldn't try hard enough. I would think, maybe I'll try a different time if I have to do a 5-hour meditation. Maybe I can sit for an hour. But if I knew God has promised me that my struggle through these 5 hours would be the biggest success in this life in accomplishing effortless stillness in meditation, would I do it? Of course I would. Any of us would. We would sit through anything. But the thing is, as we are going through this experience, we do not know what is at the other side of the tunnel. We do not always know what karma we are working through. One of the songs of Swami Kriyananda, I find the words of the song the most useful in my own spiritual journey. It is a song called Brave Were the People. There are a lot of beautiful one-liners in the song, but the one that I want to quote in reference to this particular verse of the Gita is, Swami writes in that song, the battles we fight, the victories we win, are never the victories we know. And I've thought about that a lot, of how oftentimes when we are going through challenging karma in our own life, when we feel like we are caught in a circumstance that we just want to get out of, we somehow want things to be different, I remind myself, I do not know what battle I'm fighting here. Maybe it is the battle that Dr. Lewis fought, sitting on those rocks, not able to control his body, feeling uncomfortable for 5 long hours. That battle. he did not know what victory he was winning. If somebody had asked him at the 4-hour mark or a 4.5-hour mark, what are you doing here? The only response he would have probably given is, I'm just being uncomfortable. I'm just wishing this would end. I'm just wishing I can get back into my car and leave. But little did he know what he was actually fighting. And even more importantly, little did he know what victory he was winning in that 4th hour. Because only his guru knew, only Yoganandaji knew that in that difficult experience, through that difficult karma, Dr. Lewis was accomplishing a great karmic victory. He was gaining something that was going to be his own. But you see, God cannot tell us that all the time, because we have to put that effort. That tapasya has to be won. We have to struggle. We have to go through that battle of life in order to win these victories that are our own. Sometimes, I was talking about meditation and how often people give up or people think it's a struggle. But, sometimes the struggles in life are much, much deeper and they're much more long term. When I talk to people sometimes on a very personal level, I would realize that, this is true for myself too. I'm objectifying it with other friends of mine because it is easier to see in others' life than in your own, how people often wish, how we all often wish that things were different in significant ways in our own life. Somebody who's married might wish that he would be making more spiritual progress if he was single, and somebody who's single thinks that he would be making more spiritual progress if he was married, if he had a relationship and a partner to support him. Somebody who's having a terrible health condition might imagine that if only I did not have this back problem, that I would be going deeper in my meditation, that somehow I would be making more spiritual progress. If I had a little more financial security, I could focus on my spiritual life. If I did not have to wake up at 6 a.m. for my job, I would focus more on my sadhana. We imagine constantly, every minute of every day, that somebody else's karma is more fitting for us. And Krishna is being pretty dramatic to Arjuna in this particular verse. He says, Shreyaha swadharmo nidhanaha. He says, it is better to die doing your own duty than to even be successful in somebody else's duty. It is better to wake up at 6 a.m. And miss your meditation practice and find a different time in the day to struggle to even get one round of Kriya practice than to not have to do that duty, to embrace somebody else's dharma and to get all this time to meditate, because we do not know the battles we are fighting. We do not know the victories that are waiting to be won in this particular lifetime. And all that we need to do is make that inner freedom our goal. And this goes back to everything else that we have been looking at and learning through this 3rd chapter of the Gita, which is, what is karma? Karma is what we have drawn into our own life, these circumstances that we have attracted because our own past actions. What is dharma? Dharma is our duty in this life. How do we do our karma? How do we do our duties in this world? With a sense of self-offering, doing our best to be detached from the fruits of those actions. And most importantly, as Krishna explains in this verse, even as we are doing it, do not define success as accomplishment on this material plane. We have no idea. We think the accomplishment lies in being able to reach the peak, but we gain so much by simply trying to walk on the trail. And we do not know what inner demon that we are overcoming, what karma that we are winning over. We do not know what inner freedom that we are accomplishing simply by putting one foot in front of the other, because that's all it takes oftentimes on the spiritual path to make progress. Progress is not defined by outer form. Progress is not defined by any yardstick of success that we define with our own minds. Progress is defined only by the progressive inner freedom that we feel in our own soul, by the sense of true joy that we have in our own hearts. And that, friends, is what Krishna is advocating we seek in our lives all the time, no matter what circumstances bring to us and no matter what our duty is. So until we meet next week with a different verse, God bless you all.